I went out to sea to relax. A yacht, the sun, the waves, it seemed like nothing could ruin this day. But then they showed up. The kind of people who always know how to ruin everyone's peace. Loud, arrogant, with zero respect for anyone else. At first I tried to ignore them. But when they crossed the line, I decided this time they would regret it. And my revenge on that yacht would be a lesson they would never forget. They arrived mid-morning. A small flotilla of speedboats, music blasting, laughter like a challenge. They anchored too close. Too close to kids swimming. Too close to the couple who were sunbathing 2 decks down. They climbed onto our neighbor's aft and treated our shared space like a private club. They played obscene songs. They tossed bottles. They shouted, dared each other, shoved a paddleboard into the water and laughed while it drifted away. I told myself to breathe. I reminded myself I wasn't on this trip to be angry. But their noise was a rope tightening around my patience. One of them bumped into my friend's wife and didn't even look back. Another cracked a beer over the child's head as a joke. That's when something in me snapped. I didn't want to fight. Fights ruin trips for everyone. I wanted a lesson. A smart one. Clean. Public. Impossible to ignore. I walked up to the captain. He was an old hand, salt in his beard, a calm I trusted. "Can we move?" I asked. He looked out and smiled sadly. "They'll follow," he said. "They always do." So we made a plan that didn't involve chasing or punching. We would outsmart them. We would give them the one thing they craved more than anything, attention, but we would make it backfire. I called 3 friends quietly. One knew sound systems. One could edit live footage. One had contacts on the other yachts in the bay. We huddled below deck like kids plotting the best prank in school. We kept it legal. We kept it public. We wanted to turn their show into their humiliation without breaking laws or touching anyone. First, we turned down our own music. We let the sea fill the space. We let the noise on their boats be the only noise. People on our yacht looked annoyed but curious. That's what we wanted, a small stage. Then we used what they loved most. Cameras and applause. One of my friends started a live stream, not obvious, under the pretense of just capturing the sunset. Another friend quietly contacted a local influencer who loved drama. He promised to swing by and film a wild boat party, which got a lot of attention online. The guests across the way got louder. They cranked the bass. They paraded around like kings of the cove. They didn't check their surroundings. They didn't realize they were being handed a spotlight on a platter. While the live feed warmed up, we set the real stage. We had arranged with another nearby captain to tow a small inflatable barge a bit further out. On that barge we placed a huge banner we'd printed earlier. It read in big letters, "Free VIP after party, come earn it." Under that, smaller, rules: respect the sea. Respect people. Do 1 hour of service to join. It sounds kind, almost polite. Exactly the bait we needed. One of our crew members radioed the loud group. "Hey, we've got an after party. VIP only," he called. "You gotta come over. We'll save you a spot." They cheered. They roared approval. They raised their cups and shoved off toward the barge. As they approached, the influencer's boat pulled in and the live stream exploded. Comments began flooding in. "Is that them? OMG yes. Bring it all on." They docked like they owned the place. They hopped onto the barge, still playing music, still slapping each other's backs. A camera panned onto them. They waved. They posed. Then, when they were right in front of the banner, something changed. A woman in a volunteer vest stepped forward, part of the community group we'd quietly hired for the day. She smiled, handed them a clipboard, and said, "Welcome. To join the VIP after party you must agree to help clean the shoreline for 1 hour. We're doing a beach clean right now. It's simple. Bags, gloves, 1 hour. Then the party is yours." The laughter died a little. Confusion flickered. Chatter turned into mutters. One of them laughed loudly and said, "No way. We paid for this vibe. We don't pick up trash." Cameras rolled. The live stream moderator zoomed in. Comments changed. "You didn't pay to be disrespectful. Do the right thing. Clean or leave." They hesitated. Some booed from their boats. Someone shouted that it was bait. But the influencer's feed kept going. It kept asking the question we wanted the whole cove to hear. "Will you clean up what you trashed?" For a moment it seemed they would rage and leave. They would burn off and find another cove as they had done before. But the live comments were brutal. A few followers started tagging their profiles, sharing their faces. One bold commenter wrote, "If you don't help, you're just assholes, and we'll all know." Pride is a loud motivator. They were performing for an audience, and their audience had already turned on them. A young man from the group stepped down first. Reluctant. hands in pockets. He picked up a bag. Another followed. Then another. They complained. They cursed. They argued with the volunteers. But they filled the bags. Cameras caught every complaint, every roll of the eyes. On our yacht people watched. Some laughed softly. Some nodded, satisfied. The kids who swam near the shore came back with towels and cheered when the first bag was full. A woman clapped and said, "Finally." The shift was subtle at first. A few of their bravado posts remained, but the tone had changed. The livestream comments now praised those who helped, and shamed those who didn't. Within an hour the group's arrogance had dissolved into awkward apologies. One by one they realized their performance had been hijacked by the very thing they'd mocked: responsibility. We didn't shout or film anyone being humiliated. We simply set up a mirror. They looked into it and saw themselves for what they were: loud, careless, and easily exposed. By sunset their music was soft. By moonrise many of them were quiet and tired from work they hadn't expected to do. They cleaned the stretch of beach until it looked cared for. They posed reluctantly for a photo with the volunteers, a photo that went online instantly. The influencer, who wanted content, posted the whole sequence with a caption that cut through: "VIP isn't a thing you buy. It's what you earn." The clip spread. People shared it with a sense of satisfaction. Not because someone was punished, but because someone had been made to see what they'd been doing. I sat on the aft, drink in hand, watching the sun drop. My bag was gone that day. I missed some small things. But I had the peace I wanted. And that felt like getting back a lot more. When they returned to their boats they were quieter. They avoided eye contact. One of them mouthed the words, "Sorry," though I couldn't tell if it was for me or for themselves. Maybe both. This wasn't the violent revenge some dream about. It was a different kind, a public nudge toward basic decency. And in a strange way it worked. Just as I relaxed, thinking the day had ended, my friend from below deck tapped my shoulder. He pointed to the horizon. Another speedboat was coming fast. And on its bow, a familiar silhouette waved. The night was about to get a lot more complicated. The sun had already dipped into the horizon, painting the sea in molten gold, when the sound of another engine ripped through the calm. I squinted into the distance, the sea breeze stinging my eyes, and then I saw it, another speedboat slicing through the water like a knife. On its bow stood a figure I instantly recognized. Not one of the loud group from earlier. No, this one was different. He was the ringleader, the one I'd seen before at other coves, the guy who bragged about owning the bay. He didn't come earlier because he liked to arrive late, make an entrance and ensure all eyes were on him. And now, as he threw his arms wide and shouted, "The real party is here," the cove trembled with his arrogance. The group we had humbled earlier shifted uncomfortably. They had already been made fools of once today. The last thing they wanted was for their leader to find out. But of course he noticed. "Why so quiet?" he barked at them, hopping off his boat and striding across the deck. "Where's the music? Where's the energy? What the hell happened here?" The others avoided his gaze. A couple muttered excuses, but he wasn't having it. He jabbed a finger at me. "You," he sneered. "You're behind this, aren't you?" I didn't answer. Silence was its own kind of weapon. That only made him angrier. "You think you can embarrass my crew? Make us pick up trash like children?" he roared. "Do you know who I am? Do you know what happens when people cross me?" His voice echoed across the cove, and for a moment, I wondered if this was where things would finally spiral out of control. But then something unexpected happened. The same influencer who had streamed the VIP after-party stood up, phone in hand, camera already live again. "Actually," he said calmly, "everyone knows who you are now. And they're watching." The ringleader froze, confused. He turned his head slightly, just enough to see the glowing red dot of a livestream recording. The comments were already pouring in. "Here comes the boss clown. Let's see if he helps too. Bet he won't last 5 minutes with a trash bag." For the first time, I saw hesitation in his eyes. It wasn't fear of me. It wasn't even fear of the volunteers. It was fear of something bigger, losing face. "Trash bags?" he scoffed, trying to play it off. "You really think I'm gonna?" But before he could finish, one of his own crew members, still ashamed from earlier, stepped forward and shoved a bag into his chest. "Do it," the guy muttered. "Or we're done." The ringleader stared at him, stunned. His own people. Turning. The livestream audience erupted with laughter and clapping emojis. "Why is this?" someone typed. Finally, they're standing up to him. The man's jaw tightened. His pride was bleeding. He could walk away, but if he did, he'd be the coward broadcast to thousands. If he stayed, he'd have to bow to the very thing he despised. And that's when my idea clicked. A chance for a final blow. I stood, calm, almost casual. You say you own the bay? I asked. Prove it. Not with words. With action. You want to be the king out here? Then show everyone you're strong enough to do the work. The silence was thick. Everyone stared. Even the waves seemed to pause, waiting for his answer. He gritted his teeth. And then, slowly, he shoved his arms into the bag and picked up the first empty bottle. The live stream exploded. Cheers, claps, fire emojis. The crowd watching online had gotten what they wanted. The mighty, arrogant boss of the bay forced to bend. He worked quickly, violently, like he was trying to tear the sand apart with every handful of trash. Every piece he picked up wasn't just garbage, it was a piece of his pride being ripped away. By the time the beach was spotless, sweat dripped from his forehead. His eyes burned with rage, but not at me. At himself. At the trap he had walked straight into. The volunteers thanked him warmly. The influencer signed off the live stream with a smirk. And the cove fell quiet again, peaceful at last. I leaned back against the railing of the yacht, watching him stalk back to his boat, humiliated in front of everyone. That was the revenge I hadn't even planned for, the perfect twist. Not with fists. Not with violence. But with exposure. Sometimes the worst punishment isn't losing a fight. It's being forced to see who you really are when the mask comes off. And he saw it. We all did. After the beach was clean and the last bag was tied, the mood shifted. They walked back to their boats quieter than when they arrived. Pride had been dented. For a few hours the cove had watched them change. But I knew that wouldn't be enough for some of them. Some would shrug it off. Some would pretend it never happened once their feet cooled. That's when the idea I'd been turning over all day came to me, a final move that would be unmistakable and safe. We gathered quietly behind the wheelhouse. I briefed the captain and the volunteer coordinator. The plan had 3 rules: no harm, full visibility, and a chance for repair. We coordinated with the local rescue team. They agreed to stay on standby within sight. We arranged a small coastal pickup point where the group would be met and given water, food, and a short educational session about respect for shared spaces. Everything had to look spontaneous to them. So we made it look like a gift. I stepped forward and announced over our loud hailer, "Hey VIPs. We've arranged a private night drift. Small boat, light breeze, a chance to cool off. First come, first served." They brightened immediately. Arrogance returns fast when the world offers an encore. They came 2 by 2, laughing, thinking it was one more party favor. They climbed into the small rented skiff with their music playing soft, phones held high for the next story. We handed them blankets, bottled water, and a package with simple food. They cheered. They didn't see the rescue boats circling at a distance, calm and ready. Before they pushed off, I walked up close and said quietly, "You can either join us tomorrow at the community cleanup, or take a short guided drift and meet the outreach team at Cove Point. The choice is yours." Faces changed. A few scoffed. A few looked at the banner on our boat that read, "Respect the Bay, earn the right to party." The cameras were rolling. The influencer's live stream pulsed like a heartbeat. They pushed away from the dock, joking and filming. We gave them radio channels and maps. We made sure they had life vests and a charged phone, everything for safety. As they motored into the cove, the rescue vessels maintained a respectful distance, visible but not looming. Once they were mid-channel and the sun was low, the tone shifted. The live chat flooded with messages. Where are they going? Are they going to join the volunteers? Did they choose cleanup or cruise? They did something I hadn't fully expected. They split. Half of them, tired and embarrassed, called the coordinator and asked to be picked up and taken to the volunteer point. The other half chose the drift. They wanted the short thrill of being away from the shore, thinking distance would let them breathe without consequence. We had set up the drift route to end at a small protected cove where the outreach team would be waiting. It was a neutral place. A place where discomfort could be transformed into action. When the skiff slipped into the little bay, volunteers stood on the sand with blankets and warm drinks. A local environmentalist greeted them politely and handed out gloves. "We're glad you came," she said. "We need help moving some driftwood and trash. It's simple. An hour. Then we'll bring you back with clean hands." They looked at one another, sheepish. The cameras captured the hesitation, the sighs, the reluctant acceptance. They did the work. It wasn't dramatic. It was repetitive and honest, lifting, sorting, handing sacks. Their music didn't drown the waves now. Their chatter was small. Sometimes a kid would run up and thank them, and their smiles would falter into something like shame. At one point, the ringleader, the man who had swaggered in earlier, stopped mid-throw and looked at the shoreline he'd once mocked. He picked up a torn plastic bag and stared at it like it was an accusation he could weigh in his hands. He looked up at the camera, then away. There was no grand apology. Just a slow, private unburdening. After an hour, the rescue boats escorted them back toward the main dock. They were met by the volunteer coordinator who had a short checklist: returned items, recorded commitments, and an offer of a place in a community program if they wanted to learn how to host responsibly. Some rolled their eyes. Some signed. Some didn't. We recorded the whole exchange. Not to shame forever, but to close the loop. The influencer cut together the footage into a short clip. Them arriving, the reluctant work, the quiet exit. The caption read, "You can party or you can care. The Bay chooses." It hit 1 million views in the morning. In the days after, a few things changed. The crew who had been so loud now posted pictures of themselves with gloves on, captions about the weather, and small notes about not leaving trash. Their followers teased them, but the teasing had a different tone. More accountability than mockery. The ringleader tried to keep his distance from it all. He didn't post much. He told friends it had been a stunt for content, then deleted the story. A few in his circle quietly unfollowed. Reputation, once fragile, began to tilt. For me, the final effect wasn't glory. It was a quiet satisfaction that community could turn spectacle into service. I didn't break anyone down. I didn't end lives or careers. I forced a moment of reflection in public, and that proved stronger than a punch. Weeks later, the city posted small signs around the cove. Respect the bay, keep it clean. Vendors started offering small fines for people who left litter. Local clubs agreed to rotate cleanup shifts when they hosted big parties. The ordinance wasn't dramatic, but it was durable. One evening I passed the cove and saw a small group of young people picking up straws and wrappers after a sunset gathering. They wore the same indifference my tormentors had once worn. Now their movements were careful, deliberate. It felt like the tide had turned just a little. Revenge, in the end, taught me something unexpected. Public shame can be cruel, but public responsibility can be catalytic. When you set the scene so the whole world watches, some people will change to keep their face. Some will change because they see the better version of themselves reflected back. I sat back on the deck at dusk one night, the water whispering, and thought about the day. My bag was still gone, replaced by lessons learned and small policy shifts. I felt lighter. Less about payback, more about pushing a little civility into a busy world. The last clip of the influencer's video looped in my pocket. Them, hands dirty, returning to shore. No dramatic showdown. Just a looped, human moment of consequence. And I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't to ruin someone. It's to make sure they have to look at what they did and choose a different path.